Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to part one of the Old Woman of Berkeley. Pardon me. I'm going to tell you this, and it really doesn't change anything, but this one is my favorite poem of the 6 poems that we're going to be reading in this course. I will tell you that you don't have to like the poems that I teach you. If this isn't your favorite, you're not doing anything wrong. You're not a bad person or anything like that. This is just a question of style and subjectivity, and I really like this poem. A lot of people find it to be vampiric, and they pick for this poem, they choose this is the vampire poem for 3 reasons. I have some people who say this is definitely not a vampire poem, and they give 3 reasons why and 3 quotes. And for this poem, I also get some people who say this is not a vampire poem, but I can understand why some people might, because there are some things that, you might take it and go, "Ooh, that's vampiric," but after further investigation, I realized that it's really not a vampire that's being spoken about here. So that's the cool thing about this. Now, here's the really great thing about this assignment. You can't get it wrong. Whichever one of the 3 you choose, you're going to get it correct as long as you give your reasons and your quotes. So I'm going to tell you what I think near the end, and I'm going to feed you my information, but really I want you to tell me what you think about this poem. That's the most important thing. So let's go. The Old Woman of Berkeley. This was written by Robert Southey, and this poem was written in 1798. So we are still in the 18th century here. It's pretty cool. We're going to do it the same way. This is long. This is 46 stanzas I read. I'm going to break it up into 2 readings, right? We'll do one for about 25 minutes, and then part 2, we'll do the same thing. So I'm going to read 23 stanzas. I have a little line I wrote in between the 23rd and 24th stanza. Also, I want to show you, just like always, I have an annotation for each and every stanza, and I'm going to read out each stanza, and then we'll break down each stanza. I'll give you my notes, and then we'll move on from there. So are we ready for The Old Woman of Berkeley by Robert Southey? Let's go. The raven croaked as she sat at her meal, and the old woman knew what he said. And she grew pale at the raven's tail, and sickened and went to her bed. Okay, first thing that's kind of weird about this lady speaks and understands animals. So that's a vampiric trait. Vampires can communicate with certain animals, and they can even control them in some cases. So you might see that as a vampiric trait, the fact that she communicates and can understand these animals. It's very weird. Also, another thing which some people might find vampiric is it says she grew pale at the raven's tail and sickened and went to her bed. Another person might say, hey, wait, pale is a vampiric trait, but vampires don't grow pale. They always are pale. So she had blood in her face. That's, by the way, what the color is in your face. The redness is the blood in your face, right? So growing pale, getting completely pallid and white means there's not much or any blood in your face. So she lost the blood in her face, and she grew sick and went to bed. Remember, vampires also don't get sick. So that's also something that's a little strange, but let's continue on. Now fetch me my children, and fetch them with speed, the old woman of Berkeley said. The monk, my son, and my daughter, the nun. Bid them hasten, or I shall be dead. All right. It's interesting. Well, it's not interesting that she asks to see her kids before she thinks she's dying. A lot of old people want to see their family and be with their kids when they're dying. But I will find it interesting that her son is a monk and her daughter is a nun. So they're extremely religious. And remember, vampires, they wouldn't be able to be near a monk or a nun because they're so religious. So also, that's something to think about. So let's continue. The monk, her son, and her daughter, the nun, their way to Berkeley went. So they went. The son and daughter were told, your mom is dying, she needs you, so they came. And they have brought with pious thought the Holy Sacrament. Now, the sacrament, for those of you who don't go to church, totally fine if you don't know it, is when in the Catholic Church, they have the sacrament, which is the body and blood of Christ. And they're supposed to represent Jesus's blood and his body. So you drink his blood, which, by the way, I want to point out, it's kind of vampiric that the Catholic Church, one of their biggest rituals is drinking the blood of Jesus Christ. Now, it's not blood, it's red wine, but they pretend it's his blood. I just want to point that out because that's what vampires do. They drink blood, but also they eat the little wafer. Sometimes it's a little piece of bread, sometimes it's a little wafer. They eat that. So it represents you're eating God's body. So they brought that with her. And a lot of times, and my mom does this, she's what's called she's a deacon in her church. And she does this thing where when people are dying, she actually, if the priest can't go to them, my mom comes and brings them the sacrament. She brings them God's body and God's blood in the form of bread and wine, and they drink it so they can be close to God before they die. So it's actually kind of a nice thing that their kids are bringing this to the mom so that she can be close to God before she dies. So she has a quicker trip to heaven is what people believe. Let's continue. The old woman shrieked as they entered her door. And when we say shrieked, we don't mean, yay, my kids are home. Ah, no, it's like she's not happy that they're at her door. And she cried with the voice of despair. Now take away the sacrament, for its presence I cannot bear. Okay, so she says, keep anything from God away from me. I cannot be near it. That is a definite vampiric trait. Let's continue. Her lip, it trembled with agony. The sweat, it ran down her brow. I have tortures in store forevermore, but spare me my children now. Now that's very interesting. She says, having those sacraments in my sight it's torturing my soul to be like, it burns me on the inside. But she says, I have tortures in store forevermore. In other words, I'm going to be tortured forever. So give me a couple of minutes of peace right now. It sounds to me like she thinks after she dies, she's going where? To hell. Now, another person, and if we were in class right now, you could raise your hand and say, Mr. Kenny, wait a minute. Vampires don't die. So why would she be worried about dying and going to hell? And I'd say, good call, but let's continue. Away they sent the sacrament. The fit, it left her weak. She looked at it again. She looks at her children with ghastly eyes and faintly struggled to speak. So the sacrament affected her so much and weakened her so much, she's like not even able to talk at this moment. Now it gets interesting. All kind of sin have I rioted in, and the judgment now must be. But I secured my children's souls. Oh, pray, my children, for me. So she says to her kids, I have done a ton of really evil things in my life. And I'm afraid that that's, when I die, that I'm going to be judged for all these evil things and I'm going to be sent to hell. But she does say, but I secured my children's souls. So I think she thinks because her kids are a nun and a monk, that maybe God will be like, okay, you were evil, but you produced great kids. So it's even, boom, you can go to heaven. I think that's what she thinks and hopes, but I'm not buying that. Let's continue. Let's hear what she did. I have anointed myself with infant's fat. Anointed myself with infant's fat. That means she's killed babies and either taken the fat and the juices of the baby and worn them, or she's eaten them herself, right? The fiends have been my slaves. So she's killed kids, little babies, which is like unbelievably evil. She's held slaves, which is also unbelievably evil. From sleeping babes, I have sucked the breath, and breaking by charms the sleep of death, I have called the dead from their graves. Holy moly. She has killed little babies while they slept, and she's even raised the dead, all right? We're going to find out in our research, if we haven't found out already, that some cultures believe that you can be turned into a vampire even after you've been killed. That vampires can come to your corpse and call you out of death and make you one of their own, right? And there's going to be things that they do. Sometimes they chop the head off their loved one, they spike them into the ground, or burn the body, or put the head down between their legs. And they say that by doing this, they can't be turned into a vampire after they're dead. Again, I'm not saying that she did do these things, but she's saying she did these things. She says she's eaten children, made slaves, killed babies, and brought people back from death. And by the way, people don't want to be brought back from death after they're dead, right? You're dead 30, 40 years. You don't want to be ripped back and brought into the world. You're at peace. If heaven is real, you want to stay in heaven, into that blissful paradise. So she's saying she's pulling people out of paradise. Let's continue. And the devil will fetch me now in fire, my witchcrafts to atone. And I who have troubled the dead man's grave shall never have rest in my own. And there it is, guys, gals. She just kind of admitted what she is. She said, my witchcrafts to atone. So I don't think this woman is a vampire. She's a witch, all right? And she's done a heck of a lot of evil, right? And she says, I have done so much evil that Satan himself is going to come and get me. I will never. She says, the devil will fetch me in fire. So she's lived this life of evil and probably enjoyed the heck out of it. But now it's time to pay the piper. And that means she's got to go to hell. And I think what she's doing right now is she's begging her kids to keep her from going to hell. And why does she think her kids can keep her from going to hell? Well, because they're a monk and a nun. They've got a one-way ticket to heaven. Maybe they can bring me with them. By the way, if you're this lady's kids at this point, after she just admitted, your own mom, that she kills babies, makes slaves, are you helping her? I'm like, later, mom. But we'll see what happens. Bless, I entreat, my winding sheet, my children, I beg of you. And with holy water, sprinkle my shroud and sprinkle my coffin too. So she says, after I'm dead, sew me up in my sheet, because they used to sew people up, and it's called a shroud, and they sew you in that, and then they put you into the coffin, so they kind of mummify you a little bit. She says, please sprinkle that with holy water and sprinkle my coffin too. Now remember, a vampire never dies, and also a vampire would never want holy water sprinkled on them. So I'm telling you now, it is at this point that I believe this is not a vampire story. And I can give 3 reasons why already. I've already told you 3 reasons why. And the best, of course, is my witchcrafts to atone. But I would probably choose the third choice, which is, I don't think this is a vampire story, but I can see why some people might think it is, right? She can talk to animals. She grows pale. Well, let's continue on. Let's see more. And let me be chained in my coffin of stone and fasten it strong, I implore, with iron bars, and with 3 chains, chain it to the church floor. So she says, after I'm dead and you've covered me and sprinkled my coffin and whatnot, then chain the coffin to the floor of the church, so that I can't be taken out and I can't be ripped to hell. She thinks she'll be stuck in this coffin forever. Let's continue. And bless the chains and sprinkle them, and let 50 priests stand round, who night and day the mass may say where I lie on the ground. Wow, she's asking a lot. So not only does she want to be chained to the ground of the church, she wants 50 priests to stand around her in a circle, and that they should say mass all night and all day while she's there. Let's continue. And see that 50 choristers beside the bier attend me, and day and night by tapers light with holy hymns defend me. So not only after she's dead does she want 50 priests standing around her coffin and saying prayer, saying mass and praying and whatnot. She also wants around that a ring of 50 choristers, people singing godly hymns as well. She wants 100 people to come and help her. Let's continue. Let the church bells all, both great and small, be tolled both night and day, to drive from thence the fiends who come to bear my body away. She also wants somebody to pull the church bells over and over and over and over again. So that she thinks that by being inside the church, by being chained to the ground, by being surrounded by priests, by having the bells ring all the time, that the devil and his minions won't, I like that word, minions, won't come into the church, because they won't be able to. Let's continue. And ever have the church door barred after the evening song. And I beseech you, children dear, let the bars and bolts be strong. So she said, and at night, I want you to bar the doors down so nobody can get in. None of these demons and fiends can come in and take me to hell. And let this be 3 nights and days my wretched corpse to save, till the 4th morning keep me safe, and then I may rest in my grave. She believes that if they do this for 3 straight days and nights, that she'll be able to then live the rest of her, well, not live, but spend the rest of her death in her coffin and not be ripped and taken down to hell. I don't know if she thinks if she's asking to be brought to heaven, but she's definitely asking not to be taken to hell. So if you're these kids, do you do this? My answer is, oh, heck no. But they're going to do it, right? And they have a little bit of power because they're a nun and a monk. They're going to be able to get all these people in to help this woman. Let's listen. The old woman of Berkeley laid her down, and her eyes grew deadly dim, and short came her breath, and the struggle of death did loosen every limb. So she lays down and she dies. Also something that vampires don't do. They don't die. They live forever. So she's not a vampire. And that's a good another way you can say it. Yeah, I'm not a vampire. Let's continue. They blessed the old woman's winding sheet with rites and prayers due. With holy water, they sprinkled her shroud, and they sprinkled her coffin too. So far, so good. They're doing everything that the mom asked. First, they covered her in her shroud. Then they sprinkled it with holy water. Then they put her in the coffin, and then they sprinkled that too with holy water. Now, what's the next thing she asked? Does anybody remember? She wants the coffin to be chained to the church floor. Let's see if they do that. And then they chained her in her coffin of stone, and with iron, they barred it down. And in the church with 3 strong chains, they chained it to the ground. So they did. They put her in a stone coffin, and they chained this coffin to the ground. Let's continue. And then they blessed the chains and sprinkled them, and 50 priests stood round by night and day, the mass to say, where she lay on the ground. So all day long and all night, 50 priests stand around her, and they just keep praying and doing their probably reading the rosary and whatnot. Let's continue. And 50 sacred choristers beside the bier attend her, who day and night by taper's light should with holy hymns defend her. So also, all day long and all night long, there's 50 people around the 50 priests, and they're singing their church hymns. To see the priests and choristers, it was a goodly sight, each holding, as it were, a staff, a taper burning bright. And each one of the people, they're all holding a staff, like a big stick, and on top of it, they have a candle. Have you ever been to like a memorial service or seen it on TV where there's a lot of people all holding candles? It's very pretty and very blessed seeming. And in this church, I mean, imagine what it looks like. You've got the priests praying, all holding a candle. You have the 50 choristers all singing, all holding a candle. It's very holy seeming, heavenly seeming. I don't know. Let's go with holy and let's go with churchy. I know that's not even a word, but it's very holy. Let's continue. And the church bells all, both great and small, did toll so loud and long, and they barred the church too hard after the evening song. So they did everything. By the way, we're done. That's the end of stanza number 23. The kids did everything that the mother asked, surprisingly. They did chain her to the ground. They did cover with holy water. They did get the priests and they're praying. They did get the choristers and they're singing. And they even did bar the church doors shut. So at night, nothing can come in. So all these people, these 100 and however many people, are in the church for 3 straight days doing this all for this woman. I'm going to ask you, is it going to work? Or is the devil coming to get her? Now, remember what the raven told her. The raven told her in the beginning, the devil's coming to get you. That's why she grew deadly pale and sickened. And what she's trying to do is hide from her. I don't know if the punishment's the right word. This sounds more like a reward. She's getting rewarded for all the evil that she did. She would call it a punishment. I call it a reward because I think it's rewarding that she gets this punishment for her. So it's kind of like both. Does she deserve this punishment? Absolutely. She's eaten babies, killed babies, had slaves, brought people back from the dead. Not good stuff. We'll find out tomorrow what happens. So again, you should be filling out your form right now. You might even have 3 of them already in there, but wait until the end before you make your decision completely as to which way you want to go. And always add more notes in, even if. So if you have 3 reasons why you believe she's not a vampire, this is not a vampire story, and you come across a 4th, 5th, and 6th, well, then jot those down underneath or on the back, because the more you have, the better it will be for you when you write your essay. I'm going to stop talking now, even though it's hard for me to do. I can just keep going and going and going and going and going, especially about these poems. And this one is just so cool. It's very symbolic. A lot of images in my mind. Wait until the end. It gets really cool. Have a lovely day. I'll see you tomorrow.